We have been talking over together the question of fear. And whether after hearing it, after hearing our conversation together over this weight of fear, if one is at all free of it, or one has merely heard it, saw the reason of it, the sanity of it, and cannot do anything about it, and then just drift along. I wonder what one actually has done. Each one of us, with regard to that question of fear and the identification of oneself with one's friend, family, furniture, house, country, ideas, and so on. Whether after these 4 talks, one is actually ended all identification. And therefore, there is a great deal of freedom, not relative, but freedom. And when one asks these questions of oneself, whether we ask superficially, intellectually, or as you would ask a question that affects you most profoundly, most seriously. I'm afraid we're going to have a lot of disturbance today. It's a lovely day for flying. And after asking these questions of oneself, and if we are at all serious, getting the house in order, our house, which is you, and when we put things in order, and when we put things in order in our house, we are free, we have more energy. It's only when there is disorder that we waste energy. And order implies that one has understood deeply what are the movements of disorder in oneself, why we live, perhaps even in our own rooms, with such disorder, or having one in one's house order. In oneself there is such abiding, deep disorder, uncertainty. Why such human beings live in this disorder from the moment they are born till they die? Why? Why do we tolerate to live in such conditions? I wonder if you have asked yourself these questions. And if you have, perhaps some of you have, and you discovering that one is in disorder, mechanically sets about to put everything in oneself in order. Thereby, one cultivates discipline, follow a pattern laid down after 2,000 years or 10,000 years, or the patterns laid down by some guru, some priest, some specialist in so-called spirituality. Or try to escape from this abiding, endless, seemingly endless disorder. Try to identify oneself with something that's supremely order, which is cosmos, the heavens, the whole universe. I wonder what you looking at yourself in the mirror, which tells you exactly what is. I wonder what you do about this disorder. Is one aware that one lives in disorder? Is one aware that one lives in contradiction? This constant conflict between what is and what should be. I told you it's going to be a difficult morning. If one asks oneself these questions, are you listening for an answer from yourself, or are you listening for an answer from somebody else? You understand? I'm afraid most of us are inclined to find order, not understanding disorder and investigating what is order. We easily accept some specialist, some authority, some priest, some guru who will tell us what is order. So our minds are becoming more and more mechanical. Because when we accept a pattern of order, like a soldier, drilled day after day, month after month, drilled there, the drums beating out his brains. So we follow, accept, obey, conform. Is that not conformity, obedience, acceptance, the very root of disorder? As we said, please do not accept anything whatsoever the speaker says. And I really mean it. These are the questions you are asking of yourself. So does one discover for oneself how extraordinarily mechanical our actions are, our attitudes are, our reactions are. And so our brains, our whole existence have become a routine. And that routine has made our minds I mean by mind, the brain, the thought, the whole content of our consciousness, the senses, all that I mean by the word, conveyed by the word, mind. The consciousness, the senses, the movement of thought, the content of our consciousness, all that is the mind. I'm using that word in that sense. One may alter later on next year or tomorrow, use a different word. But for now, we are using mind to convey all that. If you observe in the mirror, don't you find that your mind, your whole content, has become extraordinarily mechanical? You're Christians, or if you've given up your Christianity, you belong to something else. Or if you have given that up, you belong to something else. Or you follow certain routine, certain way of thinking, according to your opinions, experiences, which always function within a narrow limit. Right? Have you noticed this? That your mind is mechanical. Because we're going to something very, perhaps rather difficult. I don't know where it is going to lead us. It may become a little more complex. Therefore, please give little attention. You know, when you have a small child with you, you listen to the cries. You listen to the words, the murmur. You are so concerned, you listen. You may be asleep, but the moment it cries, you wake up. And you're all the time attentive. Because the child is yours, you must care for it, you must love it, you must hold it. And so you are so tremendously attentive. Even though you're asleep, you wake up. Now, could you so listen with that same quality of attention, affection, care, listening to every movement of that child? Could you do it in watching the mirror? Not me, you're not listening to me. Listening to what the mirror, which is yourself, is telling you. With that extraordinary, concentrated affection, care. Will you do it? So, we're asking, why have human beings become so mechanical? That mechanical habit obviously produces disorder. Because if you are all the time functioning within a narrow limit, in that narrow limit, there is always this energy limited, and therefore it is struggling to break through, which is the essence of conflict. You understand what I'm saying? You understand? No, you don't understand me. Understand what the mirror is saying. There is no speaker here. So can you Observe with that care with attention, which is the feeling of great affection to what you're going to listen to. We are talking about disorder. And we live in disorder of habits, of beliefs, of conclusions, of opinions. This is the pattern we live in, which naturally, being limited, must create disorder. Now, when one is in disorder, to seek order is wrong, obviously, because the mind that is confused, unclear, seeking what is order, will also be confused, will also be uncertain. That's clear. But whereas, if you look into disorder, if you understand the disorder in which you live, the causes of it, the movement of disorder, in the very understanding of it, out of that understanding comes order, naturally, easily, happily, without any compulsion, without any control. You understand what I'm saying? This is what the mirror is telling you. That to understand, not verbally, intellectually, or emotionally, but to understand the movement of disorder in oneself, why this disorder comes about. And you can discover the causes instantly if you give attention. That attention which you give to a small, defenseless child. Which is to have an insight into disorder. So, what is the root of disorder? The root of it. There are many causes of disorder. Comparison, comparing oneself with another, comparing oneself with what he or should be, imitating an example being somebody who's saint, all that stuff. I don't have to go into all that nonsense. Or conforming, right? Conformity, imitation, adjustment to something you think is beyond that which is, right? So there is always conflict between what is and what should be. Got it? Which is to compare, which is the movement of thought. I was this, or I was happy, and someday I'll be happy again. So this constant measurement between what has been or what is and what should be. This constant evaluation brings conflict. And that's one of the basic reasons of disorder. Right? And the other causes of disorder is operating from the past. Now, is love a movement of time, of thought, of remembrance. You understand? You understand my question? The question is, the mirror is asking you, in which you are looking. And is this love, so-called love, not creating such extraordinary disorder between human relationships? Right? Look at it yourself, for God's sake. Now, what is the root of disorder? We've seen the causes, and we can add more. That's irrelevant. In examining what is the root of it, don't analyze. We've been through that. Just look. If you look without analysis, you have an immediate insight into it. If you say, I'll examine, I will deduct, or from outward analyze, induction and deduction, which is still the movement of thought. Whereas if you can observe with that care, with that deep attention in which is involved great deal of tenderness, affection, then you have an insight. So we're asking, what is the root of it? Who answers? Find out. What is the root of our disorder? Inward disorder, and therefore outward disorder. You can see what terrible disorder there is in the world. Agonizing disorder. People are killing each other. And the dissidents are being tortured, put into prisons. You follow all that's going on. We tolerate all that. Because our minds accept things or try to change a little bit here and there. So what is the root of disorder? Which means you have to go into the question, what is our consciousness? Yes? What is your consciousness? As you look at yourself in that undistorted mirror, what is your consciousness? And that may be the essence of disorder. You know? So you have to investigate together what is our consciousness. Our consciousness is a living thing, moving thing. It's active. Not something static, closed, locked up. It is not like that. It's that thing that's constantly changing, but changing within a small, limited border. It's like a man thinking he's changing when he changes a little bit there in one corner and it doesn't transform the rest of the field. So we have to understand the nature and the structure of consciousness. We are doing that to find out if that is the root of our disorder. To find, it may not be. We're going to find out. So what is our consciousness? Is it not everything that thought has put together? The form, the body, the name, the senses with which thought has identified itself, the beliefs, the pains, the tortures, the agonies, the discomfort, the depressions and elations, the jealousies, the anxieties, the fears, the pleasure. My country and your country, I believe in God, I don't believe in God. Jesus is the most important, Krishna is much more important, and so on, so on, so on. Is not all that your consciousness? No? You can add more to it, more in detail. I'm brown. I wish I were lighter. I'm black, but black is beautiful. And so on, so on, so on. The past, the tradition, the heredity, the whole tradition of mankind based essentially on this. It's mythology, all that is the content. If you are born in India or in Africa, where Christianity is not the fashion, they have their own gods, their own images, their own forms of worship. That's part of their consciousness, as you have it here. Only they call it by a different name, but essentially it's the same pattern. Right? And as long as one is unaware of the content of its consciousness and acts, then that action must be limited and therefore disorder. You understand? Thought in its movement must create disorder. Unless thought has realized its proper place, which is to knowledge. Knowledge is limited and therefore it has its proper place. That's clear. We've gone into this, I won't go over and over again. So thought born of yesterday or 10,000 million yesterdays is limited, and the content of our consciousness is therefore limited, and our consciousness, however thought may say this consciousness is limited, but there is a higher consciousness, it is still form of consciousness. You got it? So, thought which hasn't realized its proper place is the very essence of disorder. Right? You understand? This is not something romantic, vague nonsense, but you can see for yourself, if you are logical, sane, clear, that thought, being limited, must create disorder. Like a man who says, I am a Jew, or I am an Arab, or a Chinese, he is limited, and therefore closing himself, resisting, and therefore wars and all the misery begins. Right? Do you actually see this fact? Not as an idea, not something somebody is telling you, but see it for yourself. As you see here the cry of the baby. Then you act, you get up. So, and part of our mechanical way of living is born out of this limited consciousness. Right? So is it possible not to expand consciousness? You understand the meaning of that? To expand, to enlarge it, to add more things to it. More knowledge, more experience, more moving from one corner to another. Trying to enlarge it. There are schools which are doing this. By practice, by discipline, control, all that. So when you're trying to expand consciousness, there is a center of measurement. You understand? When you try to enlarge anything, enlarge a house, there is a you follow from a small foundation or a large foundation, you enlarge. There is a center from which you enlarge. Similarly, there is a center from which says I'm expanding, which is measurement. It doesn't matter if you don't understand. Look at yourself. Aren't you trying to expand your consciousness? You may not use that word. You may say, well, I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be more this or that, or to achieve. So, as long as there is a center from which you act, there must be disorder. Then the problem arises, is it possible to act, function naturally, happily, without a center, without the content of consciousness? Do you understand these questions? We are putting fundamental questions. You may not be used to that. Most of us put questions rather slackly, indifferently, and move on. But we are asking questions that you must answer, must find an answer, go into it, to discover for yourself the answer. Is it possible to act, to live our daily life without the center, which is the essence of disorder? That is, in your relationship with another, however intimate it may be, if you're all the time concerned about yourself, your ambitions, your personality, your beauty, your habits, and so on, you, in your relationship with another, and the other also is doing the same, naturally there is conflict, which is disorder. So, is it possible not to act from a center? We've gone into what is the center? The center is this consciousness, which with its content, the content is all the things that thought has put together, with its sensations, with its desires, with its fears, and so on, so on, so on. Right? What is that action in which there is no contradiction, no regret, no reward or punishment, therefore an action that is whole? You understand? We're going to find out. We are going to find out. Not I find out and the answer you tell you, but together we're going to find out. Remembering that there is no speaker, but only the mirror in which you are looking. To understand it, we must go into the question of what is love. Because if we can find the truth of what is love, that may completely dissolve the center, completely bring about a holistic action. So we must go into it very, very, very carefully, if you're willing. That means, are you willing to listen? You have your opinions about love, obviously. You have your conclusions about love. You say love cannot exist without jealousy. Love exists only when there is sex. Love exists only when you love all your neighbors and, love the animals and all the rest of it. You have a concept, an idea, a conclusion about what love is. If you have, then you cannot possibly investigate. Right? If you already say, this is so, you're finished. It's like one of those gurus who says, I know, I've reached enlightenment. And you gullible, follow him. You never question him. So, here we are. There's no authority, there's no speaker, but we are asking a very, very serious question, which may resolve the conflict, the control, the constant battle between oneself and with another. And to find that out, we must go very deeply into this question of what love is. Not what compassion. I'm talking of love. Don't bring in another word and then confuse it. We are just talking of what human beings call love. Love their animals, their pets, love their garden, love their house, love their furniture, love their girl or a boy, love their God, love their country. You follow? This thing called love, which is so loaded, which is so trodden upon. So we are going to find out what it is, right? Don't go to sleep. Or take notes. I believe you are going to have cassettes which you can hear afterwards if you want to. But to take notes while the baby is crying, that's a good simile for you. You will understand it. Saying, why is he crying? Write it all very carefully. So please pay little attention. That is, to hear. That means the art of listening. You know, that baby when he cries, you are listening with all your might. The art of listening means the word art implies to put everything in its right place. If you understand the meaning of that word, really, that is the real art, not painting pictures and all the rest of it. That comes secondary or tertiary. But the art of putting your life in its proper place, which is to live harmoniously. When you put everything in yourself in its right place, you're free. That putting everything in its right place is part of intelligence. Then you say, what do you mean? You're giving a new meaning to that word intelligence. One must. Intelligence implies reading between lines, between words, between two silences, between speech, listening. So that your mind is all the time alert to listen. You not only hear with your ear, but also hear without the ear. So, we are asking what is the meaning and the beauty, if there is beauty, of love. That gives me an idea. Not an idea. Have you ever considered what beauty is? What does beauty mean? Is it connected with a desire? Don't deny it. Look at it, carefully listen, find out. Is beauty considered is it part of desire? Is beauty part of the senses? You see a marvelous building, Parthenon or an ancient Greek or Egyptian or one of these cathedrals. Marvelous building. Your senses are awakened by the beauty of that. So is beauty part of this? And is beauty the face, the color, the shape, the bones in the face, the clarity of the eyes and the skin and the fair expression of man or womanhood? You understand all this question? Or there is another quality of beauty which may transcend all this beauty. Which, when that is part of this life, then the form, the face, everything has its place. Whereas if that is not captured, if that's not understood, the outward expression, all that becomes all important, right? So we're going to find out what that beauty is, if you're interested. You know, when you see something like that marvelous mountain against the blue sky, the vivid, bright, clear, unpolluted snow, the majesty of it drives all your thought, your concern, your problems out of you. Have you noticed that? See how beautiful it is, and you're for 2 seconds perhaps, or for even a minute, you're absolutely silent. Right? Haven't you noticed it? Which means what? The grandeur of it drives away for the second the pettiness of ourselves. Right? So, that immensity has taken us over. Right? You understand this? Like a child with an intricate toy. For an hour he's occupied. He won't talk, he won't make any noise. He's completely absorbed in that. Which means the toy has absorbed him. You follow this? I'm getting tired. You understand? So, the mountain absorbs you. And therefore, for the second or minute, you're absolutely quiet. Which means there is no self. Now, without being absorbed by something, and say either a toy, a mountain, or a face, or an idea, or this or that, to be in oneself completely without the me is the essence of beauty. You understand all this? So we're going to find what is love. Because if we can find that out, our life may be totally different. One can live without conflict, without control, without any form of effort. We're going to find out. First of all, as we said the other day, there is positive action an action which is non-action. I went into that, right? Need I go into it again? Huh? Oh, no. In positive action, there is doing something about it. Controlling, suppressing, effort, dominating, avoiding, explaining, rationalizing. And in the very process of analyzing, rationalizing, there is an action which is considered positive, doing something about it. Right? And we are saying there is an action, there is non-action, which is not related to positive action. It is not the opposite of it, which is to observe without action. Then that very observation, as we pointed out, brings about a radical transformation in that which is being observed, which is non-action. You understand this? Little bit, doesn't matter. It's your life. We are so used to doing positive, right? I must not. This is right, this is wrong, this is correct, this should be, this must not be. I'll suppress, I'll control. All this is strengthening the me, which is the essence of disorder, which is the essence of conflict. If you see that, not verbally or intellectually or optically, but actually see the truth of it, then there is non-action in which there is no effort. Mere observation itself changes that which is being observed. Okay. What? 25 after 11. What's that? What? 22. Yeah. Andiamo. So we are asking, what is love? And we said we've got so many opinions about it. Opinions of specialists, opinions of gurus, opinions of priests. Your wife says or your girl says, this is love, or you say, this is love. Or you say it is related to sex, and so on, so on, so on. Is it? Is it related to senses? From the senses arises desire. Have you followed this? Desire is the movement, the concentrated movement of desire. The movement of the senses is desire. Obviously, so don't look puzzled. I see a beautiful thing, which is the senses awaken, and I want it. Oh, come on. Look at it for yourself. You see, we are saying when there is the movement of the total senses, the whole senses, not a particular sense, then desire is non-existent. You think it out. So, is love the movement of the senses with its desire. Right? Is love, to put it differently, desire? Sexually, senses are in operation. The remembrance, these pictures, the images, the sensations, all the time. And that movement of all that is considered love. Love, as far as one can observe, is part of desire. Go slowly, we haven't enlarged it. Don't look puzzled or say, no, that can't be. We're going into it. Is love attachment? Understand? I am attached to my girl or boy. I possess. So is attachment love? And our whole life is based on attachment. Attachment to property, attachment to a person, attachment to a belief, to a dogma, to Christ, to whatever it, attached. Is that love? When you are attached, in that attachment there is pain, there is fear, there is jealousy, anxiety. You may lose. So we're asking, where there is attachment, is there love? When you observe it and you are concerned deeply, most profoundly to find out what love is, then attachment becomes unimportant. It has no value. Because that's not love. So, it's not desire, it's not remembrance, it's not attachment. Right? It's not I'm telling you and you accept it, it is so. And is love pleasure? Don't look so depressed. I'm sorry. It doesn't mean you can't hold the hand of another. But we'll find out. If you understand this, we say desire, the outcome of sensation, sensation attached to thought, thought attached to sensation, and from that sensation desire, and that desire wants to fulfill, and we call that love. Is that love? Is attachment love? In attachment there is conflict, there is uncertainty. And therefore, the more there is uncertainty, more the fear of loneliness, the more you become attached, possessive, dominating, asserting, demanding, and hence conflict in relationship. And this conflict is part, you think, is of love. And this are asking, is that love? And is pleasure love? Pleasure is the movement of a remembrance. Right? Don't memorize this phrase, but just listen to it. I remember how nice you were, and how pleasant, how tender, how comforting, how sexual, this, that, and the other. I remember that. And I said, oh, darling, I love you. Is that love? And is pleasure to be denied? You must ask all these questions I'm asking. You understand? You must ask, find out. Doesn't it give you a pleasure to look at the waters of a stream? What's wrong with that pleasure? Doesn't it give you pleasure to look at a solitary tree in a field? Doesn't it give you pleasure to see the moon over the mountains as last night you saw it, perhaps some of it? Great delight, wasn't there? What's wrong with it? But then the trouble begins when thought says, ah, how beautiful it is, I must keep it, I must remember it, I must worship it, I hope to have more of it. Then the whole movement of pleasure comes into operation. And that pleasure we call love. The child, baby with the mother, and she says, I'm full of that tender affection, feeling of holding. Is that love? Please don't jump on me, just I'm asking. Or that love is part of your heredity. Sorry. Haven't seen the monkeys holding their babies? The elephant caring for the little one infinitely. That maybe we have inherited this instinctual response to a baby. And that is my baby. No, don't shake your head. It's my baby. It's of my blood, my bone, my flesh. I love it. And if you do love your baby so greatly, you will see he's properly educated. You will see that he's never violent, he's never killed or kills another. But you don't care. You only care for that little baby till he's about 4, 5, 6, and then throw him to the wolves. Right? So, is all this love? Now, the positive action is to say, no, I will no longer have sex, I will no longer I will do this, I will get rid of attachment, I will be free of attachment, I will work on attachment, do something about it all the time. Whereas the negative action is to see it in its entirety. Therefore, have an insight into it. Then you will see that love is not any of these things. But because there is love, from that love, all relationship changes. The ascetics, the monks, the sannyasis in India and Europe and all monks all over the world, they've said, no desire, no sex, don't look at a beautiful woman. If you do, think of her as your sister or your mother. Or, if you do look, concentrate on the divine. You follow? All the rest of that. And they are burning inside. Outside, denying, but inwardly burning. And that's what they call religious life. Which means they have no love. They have an idea of what love is. The idea is not love. The idea, the word is not love. But only when you have seen the whole movement of desire, attachment, pleasure, then out of that depth of perception comes this strange flower with its extraordinary perfume. That is love.